Hello, everybody. We are right at 12:30, so we're going to get started. I'm going to give a little introduction here and then I'll turn it over to Erin. So, thank you all so much for joining us. We're excited to have both members and non-members of the MCHS joining us today. For those of you who don't know us, we are a nonprofit historical membership society in Milwaukee. The mission of the MCHS is to recognize and preserve our local history. In promoting a greater appreciation of Milwaukee County's heritage, the Historical Society hopes to develop a better understanding of the issues and challenges facing Milwaukee County today. The MCHS Museum and Research Center is located on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Drive in downtown Milwaukee. Through our Lunch and Learn virtual program series, we hope to bring the MCHS to your home and by diving into a variety of topics centered on Milwaukee history and culture. Today's program, Illustrating Our History with artist Erin Boyd. And my name is Olivia Hoff, MCHS Programs Manager, and I'll be hosting the program. A little bit before we get started, I want to talk about some reminders using Zoom. Please keep your microphone muted. You can mute yourself by clicking the microphone button in the bottom left of your screen. There should be a red slash through the microphone. If you have a question, write your question in the chat. When writing in the chat, please be sure to select everyone as a recipient, and at the end of the program, we will have a question and answer session, and we will try to get through as many questions as we can. Also, this program is being recorded for MCHS members who are unable to attend the program. If you do not want your likeness to be recorded, please turn off your camera. For best viewing, please click the view button in the upper right-hand corner of your screen and select speaker view. And lastly, if you're having tech issues, please let me know in the chat and I'll help you out. And with that, I would like to introduce today's speaker. Erin Boyd knew by age 6 that he wanted to illustrate children's books. He has illustrated dozens of books, including the story of civil rights hero John Lewis, the Wisconsin Historical Society Press titled Brownie the War Dog, and the newly published as of last year and wonderful children's book Valiant. Erin lives with his family in Milwaukee. So with that, Erin, I'm going to turn it over to you. You are muted.
How's that? Um,
Perfect.
I do want to say thank you right away. I always start with thank you. I was just going to share real quick. It's okay if you all know this because I'm a co-host. When I hit share, oh, there we go. Now it's different that it started. Okay, we're good people. But I'm going to share my PowerPoint right away. I'm going to speak for a little bit, um, and I'm going to go through and eventually working up to Val Phillips because, as you know, this is not only Black History Month. We also just celebrated Val Phillips Day, which was 2 days ago now, I think. Um, but so I'm just going to go through a little presentation, and at the end, I will open it up to questions. And I always implore people, if you have a question, you can ask me. I will not be offended. If I don't know, I'll tell you I don't know. Becoming a dad later in life has really humbled me, so there's nothing you can't ask me or surprise me with. So I'm gonna go to sharing my page here now. Let's see. I think everyone can see that.
Looks good.
Are we good? Okay, good. So as I said, thank you. And to keep it light and be true to myself, I included this photo as an opening of myself as a little boy. This is so Milwaukee. So I'm African American, but I'm also German and Irish. And I'm the little boy wearing the lederhosen, holding his face. And no matter if you're African American or Latino or German or Irish in this city, it really is a very diverse city. And it's a part of who I am and a part of who we all are. So again, please ask me anything. Art is a language and I love to communicate. Now, I know that you can't speak in this, but um, I always like to go back to this image. Just think to yourselves if you know or have an idea of where this image is from. If you want to write it in the chat, that's great. Um, but it really speaks to what we're speaking about today, illustrating our history. I took this photo outside of a hotel room in Germany a few years back while I was traveling. I'd gotten into this small town or city late one night, woke up in my hotel the next morning, looked out the window, and didn't realize this giant cathedral was right outside my window. I, after researching it, I found out it was built in the 1400s. And I couldn't help but think that this small town had four churches like this, or cathedrals. There was a synagogue, there was a Catholic church, there was a Lutheran church. I forget what the fourth one is. But this was just a building there. It has stood for hundreds and hundreds of years. It has witnessed wars. It has witnessed the Cold War, peace, hunger, weddings, funerals. And it really touched me inside that all the hands that touch history that we don't think about every day. Now, this is another church, and I don't know if it comes clear off in your screen or not, but it's also a German church. It's Zion's Kirche, which is German for church. It's a Lutheran church here in Milwaukee, actually, in on North and 24th Street. I've always loved this church. It's just so striking and so beautiful. But it's no longer formally a German church. This church was built over 100 years ago, and the immigrants that built this building have largely moved from the neighborhood. It's now an African American community, and the church is now Baptist, but it's still performing the same function as a church. And things like this are around us all the time. It's history that we can touch, I always call it. Um, this was an illustration I did for the anniversary of Brownsville, which is where the church is. But you don't need to travel to Europe to experience history. Our history is just as deep, just as rich, and it's something that I use a lot in my work. And so I'm going to to a few pieces that I've done. I don't want to talk too long about my history. Um, this was my first big assignment that I got that was going to make me a star. This is the Irish Fest poster in 1993. I was fortunate enough to win a contest for this through my ad back when I was a senior. And again, it's a part of who we are. We are many things, and the Irish, along with African Americans, Polish, and Italians, came to this city and made it our own. And so while I'm illustrating, consciously and subconsciously, I'm always coming into my paintings that my history is always coming into it. We do that with everything we do in life. The piece on the left here is a piece I did for Spider magazine. I forget how long ago exactly. It was roughly after 9/11 because I remember having concerns as the war was starting up and, what would be just, what would be fair, how much would it expand, who could get hurt by it. And I did this as a little therapeutic piece for myself. It was, like I said, it was a piece I did for a magazine, but Japan, of course, and the United States fought in World War II. And I have many Japanese friends today, and I love them dearly. And they actually helped me with this piece a little bit. And I wanted to remember that who was an enemy yesterday can be a friend tomorrow. And so in this piece, I hid various things like there's a peace monument, the Hiroshima Monument for Peace is in there. I wrote some things in Japanese. And it's that realization that we are all part of the same boat. And the other two pieces are books of mine that I'm going to just show a couple pieces from. Calling the Water Drum, which was from, I think about 4 years ago. No, 7 years ago now. And Babu Song, which is from basically 2000. And so when I'm doing my work, as I said, I bring in my own history. This includes the models that I use. If I have a connection with someone, it helps to bring me into the story. And so, like this young man here that I used as the main character in this story, um, is one of my best friend's son. This young man is now married and a college graduate, but we are what we absorb. And I try to reflect that in my books. This piece is something that I often use when discussing not just making books, but a way of living. The other big ingredient in my work is empathy. Uh, Empathy is not, how could I put it? Empathy is actually something that you get something out of too. It's not just something that you give to people, it's a gift to yourself because if you can understand that person, why they're doing what they're doing, why they read the way they read, why they pray the way they pray, why they eat the way they eat, you're going to have that understanding. And so you can anticipate how they might react to certain things. If you're reading a story, you're going to connect with that person much more. And the beautiful thing about empathy is that you don't even have to agree with the person. It's just a greater understanding. So I'll often ask people when looking at this illustration, this is a young boy emigrating to the United States. They have permission to do so, but they don't have a plane ticket, so they have to get here by boat on their own. And they're rowing from Haiti to Florida. And it's a dangerous trek. And late at night, a boat sails by, and they don't know who that boat is, who it belongs to, or what they're there for. So the mom is telling her son to be quiet. You can see the son is holding himself and he's scared. Dad's rowing a lot harder to get through it. And so I always ask, can you remember a time when you were afraid? Doesn't matter what you were afraid of, but can you remember that sense of helplessness? And if you can do that, you can attach yourself to the character in this story who's feeling that at this moment. This is a fun avenue that I've been doing a lot more lately. I've been giving myself assignments. It's a way to grow as an artist and to reach more people, and to also tell personal stories that I want to share. This was a piece I did a few years ago that I think it was in four museums to date. It was at the MoA, it was in Chicago, it was in Door County, and I forget where else it was, but I really enjoyed that because I like to sit in the background and read people's comments and see what they're seeing to see if I'm communicating what I'm trying to communicate and if they can put themselves into this painting. And this is a another more contemporary piece. This is actually hanging in the MoA right now, the Museum of Wisconsin Art. Uh, this is a story that's not my personal story, but you can see I wrote here, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. There's a thing in, it's called the talk. In most African American families, you have where as kids are growing up, parents will start to share with them some of the dangers and some of the, things they might need to be aware of in life. And I was 6 when my dad had the talk with me. I was going to Mississippi, which is his home state, and I've always been very gregarious and playful. And my dad was worried about me going to Mississippi being me, and he should have. Um, but he told me two stories about African Americans and their experience in the South. One was Emmett Till, which I'm sure most of you know the story of Emmett Till. And when I went to Mississippi, it wasn't that long after Emmett Till. It was about 20 years. And so if anyone here is 20, that doesn't seem that long ago. I mean, it seems long ago, but if you're 40, 20 years ago isn't that long ago. And he also told me the story of Mary Turner, which I illustrated here. And I'm not going to go into the depths of that story, but a lot of times people are shocked when they hear that your dad told you that story at 6. It's like, yeah, but again, it's history. And history isn't necessarily good or bad. History should just be truth. And it's something that we can all grow from. There's no, I never attach shame to history, or fear or anything else. History is the path that we have walked. And I love having discussions around that. Let me see here. And so I'm just going to go in a little bit into the technical aspect of what I do, how I make my artwork. Um, I tend not to do this anymore, only because the older I get, the more I appreciate the technical aspect of a job is less important than what's inside of you. I can tell you how to illustrate a book, like the ins and outs of it in 5 minutes. It's the practice of it. It's the expanding your mind and expanding your mediums that really takes the time. But the technical aspect of it, as I said, is rather simple. So you can see here, this is my drawing table at the time, a fraction of my drawing table. It's um, always quite messy like this. And a lot of the photos around it are pieces that I'm using for lighting or for figure reference. I have other paintings around that have a certain stroke or something that they did that I'm drawing from, as well as inspirational images that feed into my work. And here you can see a folder for what is very typical for one of my books, especially books that deal with history, whether it's um, historical fiction or just a true biography of someone. I have thousands of images that I'll often collect in a children's book. Because if you have 32 pages of illustrations, you need to get stuff right. And so this is a folder from Brownie the War Dog, which Olivia mentioned before. I'm very proud of the book. It's a dog about, it's a book about a dog, and I love dogs. But it's also about World War II, which I've always found fascinating as a story because it still shapes us today. And so you can see some of the folders will say like home neighborhood reference. And so inside of that folder, there'll often be subcategories of specific types of architecture, not just from the 40s, but also from the 30s and the 20s, because people living in the 40s often didn't have houses built in 1940. They had houses built in the 20s. Um, I have a folder here that says 1940 backpack reference. The backpack that a kid would have had in 1940 is very different than a backpack today. And I love this aspect of doing a book. And ironically, I found out recently that history is the least popular subject in schools, which blows my mind because history is everything. It's adventure, it's love, it's war, it's intrigue. And so when I'm creating a story like this, I love getting the cars right. I love getting the hairstyles right. And that truly takes up almost as much time as the paintings itself. Now, the technical part of building a painting is three basic steps. As I'm developing the reference, I'm continually going back and reading over the story. Um, and images will start to pop in my head. What is the text saying, but not just what the text is saying, but the flow of the book? What will the viewer need to see to connect them page to page to page? And so in this one, this is the cover from my John Lewis book from about 5 or so years ago. It was right before he passed away. And the first thing that you have to do is do a sketch. And for me, John Lewis, I think Edmund Pettus Bridge, a young 19 or 20-year-old John Lewis leading a march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma to the Capitol for voting rights. Importantly, Martin Luther King was not on the first march to Selma with John Lewis. This is the one where it got violent, and I believe John Lewis had his skull fractured. And the editor took a peek at it, and she liked it, but she's like, um, that John Lewis isn't the John Lewis that people recognize today. So the second drawing in the corner from it is where I evolved it to, where it's him in the last year or so of his life. And they liked that, but I also still squeezed the Edmund Pettus Bridge behind it, which they thought, we mentioned that in the story. Let's just really have the focus be, when you see this book from across the page or across a room, you see John Lewis. So in the end, it was just a really beautiful painting of John Lewis. And that's, basically what I have to, all I do in a book. Um, it's a lot, but it's not that hard. I This is an example of how I'll have a piece of reference over a painting that I'm doing. This is my beautiful dog Gretel. She's since passed away, but she's also the one who I dedicated the book to. Um, she's a good old dog, and she would let me pose her to fit in certain poses that I needed her to fit for uh, to simulate Brownie. And her and Brownie were very similar types of dogs. They're both wolf hybrids. And so they had the same build, but I had to change the colors a bit. But I always go from the reference. I I feel as an artist I'm pretty good now. Technically, I can capture resemblances, but it doesn't just come from nowhere. You need to see that building. You need to see the dog. Um, no matter how good you are, you need that historical reference. This is another one from Brownie the War Dog. Now, the older I get, the smarter I work. In the olden days, I would have just used myself for this young soldier and made myself a little bit younger or imagined my face without a beard. But it's a lot easier just to find a young, fit guy to to be the model for this. And this is a real person. I mean, the model is a real person, of course, but Brownie the War Dog is a true story. And this was Brownie's handler. So I wanted to have one consistent person that I could use for reference throughout the book so that, you know, I was honoring that history of it. And this scene in the book, we see Brownie in the Pacific where the dog did go to the Pacific and was wounded. And Brownie sees or senses or smells that there's something in the distance that isn't safe and she alerts her handler. And that's when they crouch down and, you know, keeping each other safe. Now, this also is something that what we inherit affects me as a writer as well. As you know, I'm writing some of my books now as well, and I think it's something that affects you all, no matter what you do. Our history is in us. It's part of our DNA. It becomes part of our DNA. This is my father, George. African Americans, I think, are not unique to this, but there's a strong oral history in the African American community, in large part because we don't have as many records going back as far. Um, I often marvel at my friends who have family photos going back to, you know, 1900, or they can show the day that they landed at wherever they came into the United States. And we didn't have that as a kid. We had our oral history. My dad would always tell us stories about where we came from, and you could talk to your grandparents if, you know, and they can fill in even more things. And this oral history actually is what I feel is one of my greatest works of art of all time. This is the book Giving Good that came out last year, and it was the first time as an artist, and I say this without ego. It was the first time that I knew I did something good. No matter how well you do a painting or whatever your medium is, as an artist, you're always thinking, "Oh, I could have done that better," or "Oh, that's wrong," or "Oh, that eyelash is too big." When I wrote this story, I contacted my agent and I remember I was nervous and I said, I think this is good. And she emailed me back. She's like, yeah, this is good. And then I contacted her back. It's like, what do we do? Because I'd never had that feeling before. And one of the reasons this story was so good is that it's a true story. Uh, History, as I was saying, is beautiful. History has everything in it. So when I was writing this, I just had to reach from my own history to tell this story. And it's a very small story, but it tells a big story about who we are as people. I remember a few months ago, I was sitting uh, at having pizza with my son, and a guy started to come over to me, and I thought I knew him because he was looking at me and smiling, and I smiled back, and I could see his eyes were welling up. And when he got to the table, he explained that, you know, you don't know me, but I read your book to my kids all the time. Thank you. And what we often find is our feelings, or just our feelings, aren't just our feelings. We all have these same feelings. And that's going to lead me soon into Val Phillips and how uh, I use that empathy to paint that. What we eat, who we see, everything gets added to our spice rack. Food is a big gateway for me into cultures. My first neighbor was Puerto Rican. I remember being about 3 years old and asking his mom for another bowl of beans and rice because it was the most extravagant dish I had ever had at that point in my life. My best friend Saab, who I often talk about, is Palestinian American. I ate at his house every day for lunch. I Half of the things that are literally in my cooking rack are things that were influenced by eating his food, getting the recipes from his mom. It all is a part of us. And this illustration here is actually my son, who I spoke of. As I said, I'm African American, German, and Irish. My wife is Polish and Italian, and all these beautiful things come together in all of us. And so with Val Phillips, I did know Val Phillips. I met her several times, spoken with her, and she's always wonderful and generous. Um, but I didn't know her personally. I knew what she had done. My community was just outside. I grew up in Williamsburg Heights, if any of you know Milwaukee history very well. And I think she was just one district to the north or south of me. And so she was always on the news, and I liked Val. But when I was telling her story, I couldn't just call her up because she had passed away. So I connected with myself through these stories to help to tell them. And this, I'm just going to go through and share a few illustrations from the book and what's going on with her and how I used my own historical experiences to connect with it. This is Val at the very beginning. I think it's the first illustration in the book. Forensics is, I don't know if it's still a formal class taught in many high schools. I'm sure most of you know what it is. Um, I really see this as the jumping off point for her becoming who she is. She was in a forensics contest and she wanted to do an essay. Um, I forget, I have the book right here. Sh- Students had to pick an essay that could either be about humor, um, yeah, humorous narrative, um, oratory, and it's a little dark on my side. I can't see the other, but she wanted to do her own, have her own um, oratory is what she had, but you had to get permission. And the teacher said no, literally because, without saying black, she said, because of who you are, your people are much better at humor. I want you to do a humor essay. And Val was like, no, I really want to go a different direction. And the teacher wouldn't give her permission. Val went to North Division High School, which you might know, is a very different building than it was when Val went there. But it's still in the same community. At the time, it was primarily white, working middle class school. But Val was very popular, well liked in the school, and she had a lot of friends. And kids did then what kids do now. They talked, and they didn't think it was fair. And she didn't even know that her friends were talking about it and getting a petition going. And she also had another teacher who was an advocate for her that could see the unfairness in this. And so in this scene, Val has been called to the principal's office. And she doesn't know why. She doesn't know about the petition. She just knows she's been called to the principal's office. And we can all relate to that feeling, whether or not we've literally been called to the office. But when you're called to something that you didn't plan on, it's terrifying. And then when she opens the door and she sees the teacher who forbids her from doing what she wants, and the other teacher who's an advocate, and the principal in the middle, it's terrifying. And so I actively, in my mind, went to a point in my childhood at 16, in my youth, where I knew what I was doing was the right thing. But the adult in front of me wouldn't let me do it. And that's a frustrating thing at 16 because you're old enough where you can really see that, no, I think this is good. This is right. But you still don't have any power. And so Vel goes into this meeting, and the other teacher, who's the advocate, and the principal discuss the petition that's going around, which she didn't know about. And in the end, they agree that she should do it. And she does win the competition. And I think that really is what propels her to continue down the path that led her to, who she became. And I'll share the story really quickly. I had a teacher like that in school who I was taking part in an art project. We were doing a sand sculpture contest at Bradford Beach. And my mom didn't care that I went to it. But her only concern was you have a dentist appointment at, let's say it was, I don't know, 4 o'clock. You better not miss it. And I said, okay. Mind you, I had no car at that age, but I figured I could walk from Bradford Beach to the dentist, which is a couple miles away, within an hour or so. And the contest took a lot longer than I thought. The sun was starting to get low in the sky, but I finished the art project and we won. But there was no way I was going to make it to the dentist. I had 2 miles to go, and it's just there wasn't enough time to make it. And as I was run walking in the direction of the dentist, a teacher pulled up in his car and he asked me what was going on. And I told him, I got to be at my dentist in 5 minutes and I'm so far away and I'm just trying to get there to not be too late. And he sighed and he knew my family very well and he knew me very well. And we're still close friends to this day. And he said, I'm not supposed to do this. Just get in the car. And he saved my hide because I could not have gone home having missed the dentist appointment. And so we do have those advocates. And it's a resource. And it's not just a resource in life, but it's a resource in art. Now, this is what probably my favorite illustrated piece in the story. And I'm sure it's something we can all connect with as well. When you're in a moment where you're turned away, it could be a job, it could be anything. Um, there are typically two reactions we have. One is you're broken, and you can see the young woman behind Vel. She's disheartened. Her head's down. She's upset. And Vel's face, though it looks a little angry, is more determined because this was just something that was so wrong that she could not let it stand. And what's happening in this illustration, she was accepted to Howard University in Washington, D.C., and she was having a great time. She was meeting friends, she was loving the new city, and it was a Sunday, and they decided to go to church. And as they walked into this church, I don't know what church it was, but it was a old church, and they thought, oh, let's go in there. The I'll say the priest, I don't know if it was a priest or a pastor, stopped stopped in the middle of speaking and had them escorted out because they were black. And this was about 1940 maybe or so. I forget the exact time. And you can imagine the feeling, you're just going to church. Church would welcome everyone. But Vel used that as a fuel to be determined to go forward. And again, continue to push her into that direction. And one of the things that a lot of people don't think about with Vel is her community was not just African American. As I said, I grew up nearby there, and we still had a lot of German immigrants who were living there. You had Latinos, you had people of different age groups, you had a lot of senior citizens, and Vel represented everybody, as a leader should. Um, a fun historical reference here: the young man with the toolbox, he's wearing a name tag that says Bugs. That was when I was growing up, my dad was a mechanic, and he worked at a place called Bugs. So again, consciously and subconsciously, I always have to squeeze my history into there. Now, this is one of the most moving for me, one of the most moving parts of the book. Um, This was Vel's crowning achievement was fair housing. You know, it didn't matter your race, your gender, whatever. Everyone needed a safe, secure place to call home. And there was a lot of opposition to it. And Vel fought and fought and fought. Um, and we all know the history of Father Grappi and her coming together and protesting. And there's another side of it that you don't often see in history because it's not written in the books as much is the family life. Her family was scared, scared for her, scared for the family as a whole, because things were getting violent. Vel had received death threats. She had already been arrested once at this point, and there was another march, and the people were saying, "Vel, we need you to come out and march with us tonight," and she was going to go. And her husband, Dale, who was a real partner with her in this relationship, not just as a spouse, but in the relationship of representing the community, didn't want her to go. He didn't tell her he didn't want her to go. When she went upstairs to get changed, she came back down and he was gone. And what he had done was he knew that by leaving, she couldn't leave the house because they had two kids. And he went to her mom's house and talked to her mom about what was going on. So Vel called her mom, said, "Can you come babysit? I don't know where Dale is." And she called her mom, and her mom said, "Dale's over here. He didn't want you marching tonight, and I don't either. It's too dangerous." And Vel was just heartbroken and angry. And she told her mom that she loved her, but she said, "I'm hanging up now." And one of the things that I drew on for this is something that's my history that is really shaped me, probably even more as an adult than a kid, was when I was a little boy, my dad told me, "Do you know what to do when you don't know what to do?" And I remember pondering it in my head. It's like, well, if I don't know what to do, no, I guess I can't know what to do. And he showed me this little trick, and it's something I've always passed on to people when you're in a real tough situation. You close your eyes, you go silent, and you sit real still, and you just wait. You don't think about anything, you just close your eyes and just go still. And he had me do it, and he said, eventually a voice is going to creep into your head, and it's going to tell you something. And that voice is going to tell you what you truly feel. It's not about being right or wrong or anything else. It's going to tell you what you really feel. And as much as I pass that advice on to people, I ironically used it for the first time truly for myself. It was about 8 years ago. My late spouse had passed away, and everything overnight in my life changed. And I was being pulled in all these different directions, and I could not figure out should I go left or should I go right? And I remember that's what I did. I sat, I was on a futon, I closed my eyes, and I just thought, do I do this or do I do that? And within a minute, that voice told me. And I knew the voice was right because what it told me to do was hard. And my conscious voice usually wouldn't pick the hard route. Let's see. Oh, let's skip back a little bit. This is one of my favorite Vel quotes. Winning isn't nearly as important as doing the right thing. I think that could be a lesson for us all in life. Um, Winning, yeah, winning is nice. Awards are nice. Recognition is nice. But the quiet beauty of doing the right thing is the greatest reward. I'm a dad now for the first time. My son is 6. Um, and 99% of what I do when I do get it right for him, he'll never see it. He'll never know it. But it's going to help shape him and his character as a person going forward. And there's nothing more than you want to do in life than to help someone else go forward. Now, this is the last slide I'm going to share because I can talk forever. Um, I do believe that history sees us, and it doesn't. You probably have heard this expression. it doesn't really shape us as much as it reveals us. As I spoke when I was going through that hard time years ago, when you're really under stress and under pressure, you come to know what to grab. Um, if you have a castle full of treasure and it's on fire, you don't have time to save it all, it doesn't usually take you long to figure out what I'm going to grab. And it's not the money, it's not the jewelry, it's a memory. It's something that's a part of who you are. And this painting is of my grandfather. I did it years ago. Um, I painted it from a photo that I took when he was in hospice. Grandpa Hugh was one of my heroes of life, and he was that person who, as I spoke earlier, he did the right thing always. And even when he did the wrong thing, he would acknowledge it. So in essence, he didn't really do any wrong because he would say, I was wrong. I'm sorry. Um, he was an African American kid growing up in the South who was orphaned. And I think he was about 12 when he was orphaned. And he never complained about it or anything. That was just life. And it was during the Depression, so it was hard for everybody. And he just went and he started grabbing random jobs to make ends meet, shoe shine. And then he would climb up to another job that would pay a dime more. He was a longshoreman. He worked in a foundry. That was too hard for him. That was too hard for him. And then World War II happened. And I remember him sharing really horrible stories that he endured, but he signed up right away. And I asked him after all he had seen in his life, young life at that point, why his first instinct was to sign up. And he said it was because simply, it's my home too. Uh, no one's home is perfect. No one's family is perfect, but it's our home and it's where we come from. And the greatest lesson that he taught me, actually, I have it right here. So this rarely leaves my house. It's the most money I've ever spent on a frame as well. This is a drawing of my grandfather as a young man. I'm trying to get the glare out of there. As I said, he served in World War II. And because he was African American, he African Americans were largely barred from serving in combat. And he was in an engineer regiment, and he had climbed to the rank of first lieutenant. But and even though he's a first lieutenant, it wasn't said it wasn't that he couldn't give orders to subordinates who were white. It's just that they were not obligated to follow it. Uh, However, one job that they gave him was to be in charge of a German POW camp in Germany during the war. And the irony there was German soldiers would follow his orders. Regardless of whatever their internal belief system was, they looked at the pin on your uniform. Oh, you're a lieutenant. They would salute you. And there was one young man who he befriended, and he even gave the guy a job in the camp. The camp was so huge, essentially they converted a town into a camp. And I asked him how you built a wall around that. He said, basically, you didn't need a wall. If you fed them, they stayed. They're mostly hungry and wounded at this point. You'd get hundreds of men coming in at a time. Many would die from their injuries. They were just waiting for the war to end. And so this young man who he befriended, he gave a job in the camp and he would help my grandfather out with various tasks. He would get his food for him. And when I was 8, I remember saying in my 8-year-old mind, which back then was like, oh, German bad, America good. You let a German guy bring you your food? And it was one of the few times he ever gave me a stern look. And he said he was just a man who wanted to go home. And I understood in that moment that there was a man outside of that uniform that had parents like I had parents, that maybe had a brother like I had a brother. And he just wanted to go home. And he was an artist because he drew as a gift to my grandfather, he drew his portrait on the back of an army folder. And years later, many years later, I think it was the last year of my grandfather's life when I told him how much that story had, you know, stuck with me and how I carry it and think of it all the time. He gave that drawing to me. Well, he started to give it to me. My grandmother saw him taking it off the wall and said, "No, you can't give that away." And as I said, he passed away soon afterwards. And at the funeral, my grandmother was like, "Here, you can have it." And if there was ever anything that I needed to grab on the way out the house besides my son, it would be this piece. Um, Now, I've talked for long enough. I would be very happy and excited to answer any questions you all might have. Let me see if I can uh, stop sharing here. There we go. So,
Thank you
any
so much,
questions?
Erin.
Thank you.
That was a wonderful presentation. I'll give people some time to type their questions in the chat. Um, so feel free to do that. And while we wait, I have a couple questions, if I may.
Well, sure.
Cool. So we see in all your books, to me, it's very clear that it's your work, but I do see different styles, like
Oh, yeah.
kind of interwoven. So what is your experience with different illustration styles and how do you choose a style per project?
So I touched on it only a little bit
Yeah.
because, as I said, I can talk forever,
Yep.
especially artists can talk about their work forever.
It's a good thing.
Um, in fact, you can see it out of the corner. It would be the bottom left corner. There's a giant poster of Giving Good. For years, oh, actually, the book is behind me too. Um, for years, I'd been developing this style. I was known for this realistic style that you saw more in, if you remember the first two children's books I showed, Calling the Water Drum and not Giving Good, Calling the Water Drum and Baboo Song is a much more traditional watercolor style. And that's what I've been known for. And I love that. But after 20 or so years, I was getting a little, not bored with it, but, I wanted to evolve. And I also knew that I had my own stories to share. And so I started developing this style that was more representative of who I was for my stories. And so those two pieces that I showed that were at the MOA, that was part of that journey. It's like, because editors would always love that style, but they would never take a chance on it. They're like, oh, that's really cool. Now go back to what we know from you. Um, and so I was kind of using it as, what's the word in business? Where you test something with an audience.
A prototype? No, I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. And so showing my work in museums and galleries was a way of researching that. Are people connecting with this? And that gave me something really solid that I could take back to publishers and say, look, people are really connecting with this art and this style. And I've also written this story, and this is how I envision it looking. And so this style is something that really has been around for over a decade with me, but has only been surfacing in my work in the last maybe 5 years or so. It also has the benefit of being quicker.
Okay.
Um, to paint clothing as opposed to, so like this is the Vel cover. We're people. We're drawn to faces and hands. You look at people's eyes, you look at their mouths. We're reading who they are by looking them in the face. And so those are the areas where I really focus, the technical skill of capturing that look, capturing that glint on the eye. The clothes are more of a contrast. They're more to support the figure. So, and here it's paper, it's real fabric, just a basic flat but beautiful medium to complement her face. I use real buttons on the buttons. And that, takes an hour or whatever to do.
Sure.
But to paint the whole figure and the clothes and the folds and the shadows, it's time consuming. And now that I have a kid, it's really hard to work around the house with a kid.
So leave
Uh,
it.
Not in a bad way. Kids are very selfish. Um, my dogs would always sit with me in my studio and just lay at my feet. If you got up to get a drink or did whatever, they were fine with it, and you can come back and get back to work.
Yeah.
Oh, dad. Yeah.
Does
So
he ever join you and make his own creations?
he does. In fact,
Good.
I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing. I love art and I want him to love art, but I don't want to push it on him.
Sure.
So I never really bring up art with him, but he loves it. And
I'm not
he's
surprised.
copying, I'll see him copying what I'm doing.
Oh,
And it finally got to the point of this Christmas, I bought him a drafting table. And
yeah.
it's, you can't see it,
Oh,
but it's
wow.
just maybe 10 feet from me. He has a drafting table with all of his crayons and his markers and all that, and scissors and pencil sharpeners. And again, whatever he comes to, I want him to be who he is.
Hmm.
But art's probably winning at this point.
I mean, it's in the genes. It's in the genes.
Well, and like I was saying before, you absorb stuff even when you don't realize you're absorbing
Totally.
it. Um,
Totally.
my friend Saab, who I mentioned, that he's a Palestinian American. I remember he passed away about 10 years ago now. And I went to his house for the funeral. And I remember coming up the driveway and I brought my dog. And I brought my dog for me because I was trying not to, I was emotional. And I didn't ask them if it was okay to bring my dog to the funeral. But there was this knowing because I knew them for 30 years, I could bring the dog to the funeral. And when his mom saw me and she hugged me and she said, "When I saw you come up the driveway, I was seeing my son coming home." You know, that connection that, when I think of hummus, it's her name is Najwa. Every hummus I ever eat is compared to Najwa hummus. And even just as beautiful, when my late spouse passed away, it was the last day of Ramadan. And Ramadan is, the holiest holiday for Muslims. And you're not supposed to do extracurricular activities. You're meditating, you're fasting, you're reflecting uh, as you go through life. And I was hanging outside of the church before I went into the funeral because I was stalling. I just didn't want to go in right away. And I saw this entourage of cars pull up. And they're clearly coming to the church. And as they pulled up, I saw it was my friend's entire family. Mom, dad, brother, sisters, cousin. They all came and they were all dressed beautifully. And I remember the first thing I said, which we all do, was something stupid, which was just, I, I didn't say hello or thank you. I just stared and I said, "But it's Ramadan." And my friend's mom said, "Don't worry about it." And I just again repeated, "But it's Ramadan." And she said, "You're our son. Do you know why you're our son?" And I said, "No." She said, "Because you loved our son." And so these little things in history, our history that we pick up,
Hmm.
stuff like that, you don't see it in the moment. Um, when they're having a family argument and I'm sitting there and they're comfortable arguing in front of me and I don't even hear it,
For the family.
that's, yeah, you don't get that from one day of history. That's a
Yeah.
lifetime. There are still streets that I accidentally turned down that aren't there anymore because a
Hmm.
new building is there. Not new. There's a street that was cut off when a Kohl's was turned down. Torn down. They built a giant pick and save. But in my head, I can still turn left on that street. And it's taken me years to stop trying to turn left and take a shortcut down that street. I mean, it's not just because I'm speaking to you about history, but as an artist, I cannot help but see history.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that so much about you as an artist, and it's very clear through your work. And I think the next idea for your book, don't call it out, but would be the story of you and your dear friend and that family. It would be
Um,
incredible.
I do have, so Giving Good,
Mhm.
um, the irony with Giving Good is that I, I don't want to rank it,
Mhm.
but one of the greatest awards I ever got was for that book.
Yeah.
Wisconsin Library Association gave it an award this year. And I remember getting up to accept the speech and laughing. It's like, I've been painting my whole life, and the first award you give me is for writing. which is cool. It's really cool, but unexpected.
Yeah.
Um, but it has opened a door, and I love illustrating.
Yeah.
Vel, um, I think it won from the New York Public Library. I forget
Mhm.
the name of the award.
The book of the year,
Yeah,
something like that.
2025.
25. Yeah.
They had a list of their children's books of the year.
Hmm.
Valiant was one of them. They love the artwork, and I love doing it. But it's like now I've started writing, and it's like, I kind of have something I want to say. And it also avoids those little moments when you're illustrating and the editor says, make the shoes red. If I'm writing it, it's like, no, they're going to
No,
be blue.
they're
They're
going
going
to
to
be
be
blue
blue.
shoes. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, editors can still, they still, of course, have a say with me. I'm known to be very affable to work with,
Sure.
but I have had people make changes where they wanted, in one book, they wanted the color changed of two individuals. And I was uncomfortable with it.
Hmm.
They weren't being racist, but they had a vision. And my feeling was that this this is a true story. This is a real family, and this is how they look. You don't need to change it to make it more real because it already is a real thing. And so when you're writing it, you have a little more say that, no, it's this is how it's supposed to be. And in Giving Good, there was one scene that was taken out that I wanted to keep, but I didn't fight to keep it. I made my case and then I said, but I'll leave it up to you guys because I'm always open to what I might not be seeing. Um, there's a part of the story, and it's a true story, when my dad and I and brother went to see Star Wars, Return of the Jedi. And this is back before you had an app and you could just push a button and you had to show up to buy the ticket and then you had to show up again to wait in line for that
Yeah.
showing. And my dad, on one of his few days off, did that. He stayed in line all day, got the tickets, came back, got us, stood in line with us to get into the theater. And um, I was the baby. My big brother, he's always the zombie apocalypse. My big brother's going to be okay. He'll find a way to survive. He got a seat, and my dad got a seat. And I was just kind of like wandering in the aisle. I couldn't find a seat. And my dad looked over and saw me and said, "Hey, you take my seat. I saw one in back. I'll take that one." And I didn't see any seats in the back, but I was like, "Oh, I got a seat." And it wasn't until years later when I was talking to him about that was the last movie we would see together. Um, how much as a kid that meant to me. And, I thanked him for it, because as a kid, you don't say thank you. You don't, you're thankful, but you don't always say it.
Kids are selfish.
And I found out that there, of course, wasn't a seat in the back, but that he had stood in the back for the whole film. Because back then in the 80s, you could have standing room only. As long as you cleared the aisles, you could stand in the back. And the editor was younger than me, obviously, because he didn't know what that was. He's like, but your dad bought a ticket. There should be a seat. And it's like, well, Star Wars, there wasn't a seat.
Hmm.
How's there not a seat? It's like, fine, I'll take it out. So in the book, I simplified to say that he gave me the front row seat and he took the back seat.
Sure.
Um, but again, that's history in itself. You know, now we have apps. Now you can only buy a ticket for a seat, and you can even pick the seat that you get, which I know I'm getting old because I'm not ready for that.
Hey, I also prefer the old way. Just let's easy peasy get the ticket, get it done because then you got a whole mess of other issues. But that's so true. In your artwork, you can see the context of time, and I really appreciated, like you said earlier, how you do that research to get it right.
Yeah.
With the backpack, with the types of shoes, or whatever it may be. So that's just another way that your artwork really
Well, yeah, and
does speak to that.
like I was saying with my friend, you're absorbing when you don't realize you're absorbing. The viewer is reading and they're looking at this little boy and his dog in the story, and they're noticing the clothes, but they're not really paying attention to it. Um, but it's building something inside of them. that's real and true, and they don't know that that car is a real type of car, and it's touching them on a level that they don't always fully appreciate. But if it's wrong, you know, if you
They'll
have,
know about it.
yeah, that's why I always avoid things in my books as much as possible, whether I've written them or not. I avoid using things like cell phones.
Yeah.
I'll use a landline because, not everyone uses them, but that's still a thing.
Yeah.
I pulled out my iPhone one time and a teenager from across the room was like, "Oh, that's an iPhone 5."
Already out of date.
I was like, "How can you? It's just a
Oh my
square. How can you tell?"
gosh.
They know.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to avoid things that are like from this moment.
Yeah.
Blue jeans are always good because blue jeans stay and t-shirts stay overall.
Staple. Yeah.
Yeah. Because you don't want history to be a distraction in the story. You want it to age well. And so if you do something that is too new, just like if you have, this isn't too new. Um, if you have Bon Jovi, if they're at a Bon Jovi concert, you're going to lose half your audience right away because who's Bon Jovi and are they still together? It becomes a distraction.
That's funny.
But if you have it be, let's say, if you have it be, you know, with Aretha Franklin, because she's older,
Yeah.
it reaches a wider gap of people. So if Aretha Franklin is playing in the background in a story, it's not going to stand out to because it's an American icon. It's not a 60s, 70s, or 80s or 90s thing. It's Aretha Franklin. And
Transcends.
Bon Jovi for Bon Jovi fans out there will be that as well.
I mean, he's pretty awesome.
Yeah, my son asked his teacher on the first day of school if she liked Bon Jovi, and his teacher laughed because she's the same age as me. It's like, yeah, we know who Bon Jovi is. Um, but no, what that church that I mentioned in there, do you know that one? Zion's
The one in Germany or the second?
the one on North Avenue,
Yeah, yeah,
24th. I mean, how fascinating is that? A German immigrants hand by hand built this church because that's what they look like where they came from,
yeah.
and they're going to build them like that here. And 100 plus years on, 120 years, whatever on, it's now a Black Baptist church. And the congregation is still full and it's still active. It's performing that function. And those German immigrants have moved here or there.
Spurs.
It's beautiful.
It's so community driven. So many different angles and history. So absolutely. We do have a question. We'll make this our last one, just because you and I could talk all day, and we want to respect your time and everybody else's time. So, from Margie, she asks, "Who are some of the artists that you are following, learning from these days? Children books, illustrators, and otherwise." So, across the board.
That is a good question, in part because um, I'm in a shifting kind of point. Um, because I'm 54 now, and about every decade or two, your library, that internal library, gets redone a little bit because new things are always coming in. But ironically for me, it's a lot of the old things are coming back. Um, and especially having a kid, um, you're seeing things from a different angle and also remembering when you were at that point. One person that I've always drawn on, and he was a friend of mine, he passed away 2 years ago, I think now. Jerry Pinkney. He's a children's book illustrator. Wonderful guy. When I was struggling to get my career going, I wasn't struggling. I was young. And if something doesn't happen in 5 minutes, that's not fair. Um, but I had reached out to publishers. I had reached through all these different things and trying to see how I was going to make things click. And it dawned on me one day, I should talk to artists. And Jerry Pinkney was a well-established artist already at that time. And I called him, it's just out of the blue. I called two artists, and they both picked up the phone. And Jerry talked to me for about an hour, answered all my questions. And from that point on, Anytime I wanted to reach out to him, he would pick up the phone. I have a drawing on my wall that he gave to my late spouse and myself um, because his style is that traditional watercolor style, which is the foundation of what I do, and which is what drew me to his work because you can see the pencil lines through it. You can see how he built it like a structure. And he doesn't erase the pencil lines, he lets them become part of the form. And he probably has shaped me the most consistently throughout my professional career. But then I'm also going back to a lot of late artists like Ezra Keats. I don't know if you all know Snowy Day. Um, Ezra Keats, I don't remember when he passed away, but he did a lot of illustrations that took place in city environments. And one of the funny things about it is I bought most of his books. Um, and I never looked at the jacket cover to see what he looked like. And because he was writing stuff about the city, he lived in New York. And so a lot of the kids were often Latino or African American. And I said to my brother one day, it's like, he's not black. Um, he's a Jewish artist in New York, and that's what he was seeing. And he captured the culture so well. I always go back to him. And then I've been kind of expanding more in the fine art direction too. I'm going to get her name wrong. She hasn't directly influenced my work, but she is someone who I've been looking at a lot more and become friends with. Her name is Nina Garbazi. Forgive me if I'm saying it wrong. She was the at the Artist Biennial this year at MOA. She won. She was the um, they don't call it first prize, but they have several prizes, and she was the top award winner. And she and I have what would probably be really boring conversations to non-artists about texture and layers and like how you can create a line with a shadow. And we can go on and on about that forever. Things treating, for my work, contrast is a big deal. And when I was young, black would be next to white, red would be next to green. And I started realizing you could contrast with different mediums. And then you can contrast with different textures. And so my paintings now have more depth to them. As I said, the figures will actually have real clothes on. Or I might do that thing where I elevate a strip of paper across it so that it will cast a shadow to give a little bit of depth. And you don't notice it, but you do notice it.
Right.
And friends like Nina have really inspired me. I hope that wasn't too wordy, Margie.
It was a great answer. I think that really speaks to your constant interest in learning and refining your craft, redefining it too. Marge says that was great.
Oh,
Um, so it's so clear in your work that you are a lifelong learner just from the content you write and also the content you draw. It's so clear and that I think speaks to your characters. That's really cool.
oh, actually, and if I may interrupt before I forget,
Yeah,
is it okay with everyone if I take a screenshot? Because I'll post this later.
go ahead.
I mean, you're the only one that, yeah, shows your face.
Anybody wants to turn the camera on? Go for it.
So if anyone says no, just message no and I won't post it. Um, and I'll crop off the names of everyone. But no, this Milwaukee is a wonderful city in that people often think you need to go to New York or Chicago to have culture, to have all these things. And yeah, you can certainly find that in New York, but you miss the intimacy here. Like I said, I it actually wasn't the last time I bumped into Val. It was the second to last time I bumped into Val Phillips. She was getting ice cream.
Yeah,
And it's just like, Val? And
incredible activist and icon. Wow.
yeah. Yeah. It's like you're getting ice. Of course she's getting ice cream,
Of
but
course.
and I forgot how tall she was, barely over 5 feet. Um, and it was like this grandmotherly kind of, oh, hey baby, how you doing? And it's you won't get that in New York. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but people are too busy. Here, people are going to remember you. They're going to sincerely talk to you. They're going to look you in the eyes. And I wouldn't trade that. I wouldn't trade that.
Gotta love the Midwest. Gotta love Milwaukee for that very reason. So again, thank you, Erin. I am gonna stop us off for today. It was lovely talking with you and hearing about your work and your presentation. And I think I can speak for everybody that we all really enjoyed it. And thank you to the attendees. We really appreciate you joining us as well. And stay tuned for some more of our MCHS programs and events. The next iteration of our Lunch and Learn will be about Latina activism in Milwaukee with author and activist Eloisa Gomez and the League of Women Voters. That'll be happening in March, on March 13th. You can register for that on our website and social media. And you can keep in mind that if we're talking about art, that we have a public art award that's happening in April. It's a free event you guys can attend, and all of these submissions are being organized right now by our jurors to select the top three in the winner for our public art award. This is the second year, so mark your calendars, April 16th. That'll be happening at the FCHS. And you can follow us on social media at MKE History to see all of our upcoming events and programs. We'd also like to hear from you, so I am putting a link in the chat to complete a survey. We want to hear from you, make sure that we're coming up with content you enjoy, and also make sure that we are listening to feedback to make our programs better. And if you'd like to see more programs like this one, please consider supporting the Milwaukee County Historical Society. We recognize that Milwaukee history spans across diverse communities, ethnicities, and cultures, so we hope to continue to bring that and us together. And Erin, did you have a
I was just going to say, what you were saying was really important, so I'm sorry.
no? Yeah, please.
This is something, so usually I do these events, live. I mean, this is live, but in person. And people always come up to me afterwards because everyone always has a question, but they don't want to always say it out loud. I would leave it open to anyone that they're free to reach out to me through. I'm on Instagram a lot. And so you're free to reach out to me if you think of any questions that you have. I'd be happy to answer them as well there. Okay.
Oh, that's so kind of you. Thank you for that. Yes, follow on Instagram. That is a really generous offer. So thank you for that. And again, thank you, everybody. I hope to see you at a few of our future events. And thank you again, Erin. We really appreciate you. So
Thank
have
you.
a great rest of your day, everybody.